Okay, everyone, hello. I'm Dr. Jenkins, and this is kinesiology. You can hear me, is that correct? Okay.
Yes.
As I'm doing this, I'm having flashbacks to the pandemic when we were all online. Is anybody else having flashbacks? They're not pleasant flashbacks. Hopefully, this
I
first
had you for Hudson
meeting
Valley.
is only online for a week, and then we'll be back in class next week. Okay. For this first meeting, I'm going to take roll, and then I'm going to go over the syllabus. And then we are going to start with some material from chapter 2 on terminology and human motion. Cool. Let me get my attendance sheet here. All right. Just a couple notes. Whenever I do something on Zoom, I don't require you to have your video on. I like when you have your video on so I can see your faces, but I'm not going to require it to make you feel uncomfortable. But if you at all are willing to put your video on, I appreciate it, but I don't require it. Okay. When I take roll, if you would please turn on your microphone and say hello and just say you're here. Also, if you want to be called something else, or if I mispronounce your name, please correct me. All right, let me get that started. Okay. All right. Lily Batul.
Hi, I'm here.
I'm not able to hear you. Lily, can you try and say hello again?
Can you hear me now?
I didn't hear you. Is it my problem? It could be my issue.
I can hear her, so yeah.
Okay, can you try it again? I just turned my volume up. Can you try it again, Lily?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. This is so painful. I'm sorry.
It's okay.
All right, I just turned my volume up so I can hear you. Thank you, Lily. Brianna Burns. Is Brianna here? Just so you know, I have myself logged in on my iPad too. So once I start to lecture, I can still see you on the screen. So if I'm looking to my side here, it's just gonna looking at my iPad. I'm not looking at, I'm not watching a movie or anything. All right, so no Brianna. Michaela de la Cruz.
Here.
Michaela, okay. Alyssa Duval.
Here.
Alyssa, thank you. Jenna Egan. Okay. This is really bringing me flashbacks. I don't like it. One of my colleagues said that during the pandemic, she had a student who always had a glass of purple juice, and she thought it was grape juice for a while, but then she came to realize that the woman was drinking wine. Hey, but at least she was there, at least she was logged in. Hopefully you're not drinking right now, hopefully. All right, Taylor Engster.
Hi, I'm here.
Hi, Taylor. Did I pronounce that correctly? Engster?
Yes. Yeah.
Holly Fight.
Yep, I'm here.
Oh, hi, Holly. We've met before.
Yeah.
Leslie Flores.
Here.
Ah, there you are, Leslie. Okay, welcome. John Fradiani.
Yeah, I'm here.
I saw you there, John, waiting for you to check in. Okay,
Yeah.
excellent. Angel Grandinetti.
Angela, but yeah, I'm here.
So I got the last name correct, but not the first name.
Yep.
Angela, thank you. Casey Jaquila,
Yep.
I believe you go by Casey, is that correct?
Yep.
Excellent. Brett Labier.
Here.
Did I pronounce that correctly?
Yeah.
Labier. Taylor Levy.
Here. It's Levy.
Okay, Levy. So we have 2 Taylors so far. John Locicero.
Hey, I'm here.
Did I get close to your last name?
It's Lo Cicero, but yeah.
Locicero?
Yeah.
Locicero. Must be Italian.
Yep.
Yep. All right. Catherine Matson.
Hi, you can just call me Katie.
Katie. Kristen McAlonen. All right. I know this is painful. I won't do it every time. Christopher Miller.
Here.
Do you prefer being called Chris or do you like Christopher?
Chris is fine.
Dana O'Born.
Here.
Dana, okay, welcome. John Perugino.
I'm here. It's Perugino.
Perugino. Perugino. All right, thank you, John. Michelena Price.
Hi, it's Michelina.
Michelina. Michelina. Sometimes I just make some notes to make sure I'm pronouncing your names correctly. Jordan Prouty.
Hey, I'm here.
All right, welcome. Ashley Pulcher.
I'm here.
Okay. Matthew Rabati.
I'm here.
Do you prefer being called Matt?
Yeah, I do.
Got it. Next page. Caitlin Rice.
I'm here.
Okay. Jan Rosenberg.
I'm here.
Jan, there you are. Welcome. Daniel Sanchez Dania. Looking at my people here. Okay. Elijah Tortorici.
Here.
Did I get that correct? Tortorici?
Yeah, spot on.
All right. Now, some of these names are familiar. I think I may have had some of you at Hudson Valley. Is that correct?
Yeah, you
All
had me.
right. Yes. Elijah, Casey, Holly. Okay. Mia Unverzat.
Here.
How did I do?
It's Unverzat.
Unverzat.
Yeah.
I was kind of close.
Yeah.
Unverzat. Okay. Jillian Wilder.
Here.
Is there anybody that I didn't call?
You didn't call me.
Oh, Nate. Yes, you are on my lab, but not on my lecture. So let me add you here. Do you like being called Nate versus Nathan?
Oh, it doesn't matter.
Okay. Is there anybody else that I did not call? Let me check my board over here. All right. It's on there. Hold on here. Okay. All right, I will not do that every time we meet. That's painful. I just wanted to get a sense of who was here this first meeting. So everyone was able to get to the link okay for the Zoom meeting? You're able to get onto Moodle, see the material? I would guess so because you're here, but okay, because I put it on Moodle and I also sent some emails out. Did you get the emails? Okay. I don't use Moodle that often, so I'm trying to make sure that what I'm sending out, you're getting. I do have the chat open, so if you have a question and you don't want to, or it's easier, you can just type something in the chat. All right. All right, so here we are. We are at kinesiology. I'm excited. You may not be, but I'm going to bring the excitement even through video. Very excited. So next week, the plan is to be back on campus. So I just want to be clear on what we're doing. So we meet only in person for lecture on Thursdays. So this time next Thursday, we meet in person. I was told where the classroom for our lecture is 101 Science Hall. Okay. And then next week, we are going to meet in person for lab. So either I will see you Monday or Thursday for lab, right? The Monday lab time is 2:30 to 4:30. And the Thursday lab time is right after our lecture, 4 to 6. For the lab, let's just go ahead and meet in the gym in Robeson. We have some other classrooms that are reserved for us nearby, but we're all gonna, I think it'll be easier if we meet in the gym because we're gonna spread out and do some stuff. So this is a reduced seat time lecture, which means that instead of meeting twice a week for lecture, we meet only once a week in person on Thursdays. And then the other lecture will be delivered through a video. So I've already posted a link to a video for the first lecture. So 2 questions for you. Does everybody understand the times that we're meeting? So we meet in person once for lecture, and then the other lecture, it's your responsibility to watch through the video. And then we meet in lab once a week in person. Are there questions?
So is the video one, does it come up every Thursday, or it's like, does it already on Moodle and we can watch it whenever?
So what I'm going to do is I'm going to record the video probably on Friday, but I'm going to record it after we meet on Thursday because I'll know where we left off. So I will post the video probably either Friday, Saturday, or Sunday. Let me be clear. I'll post the video Friday, Saturday, or Sunday. And I'm kind of thinking that you would watch it Monday, Tuesday, or Wednesday. So if you've looked at the syllabus yet, which we're going to go over, I've put that video lecture that you would watch, but sometime between the times of Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. And so I'll post that on Moodle as a link to my YouTube, and it'll be posted before Monday. Are there any other questions?
I just have 2 questions. So on Monday, we just watch the video. We don't have to zoom in or come in at all.
Correct. So for the second lecture part, we're not going to meet at this time or anything. You'll be able to watch it at your own pace.
Okay, and then for my lab, it says that on Thursday we meet at Gurley Hall. So instead we're going to meet at Robeson.
Correct. So we also have that Gurley Hall location, but we also have the gym. So I haven't been to campus yet to scope out those other locations. So for the ease, everyone next week for lab will go ahead and just meet in the gym, Robeson Gym.
Okay, thank you.
things are a little kind of up in the air since we're Zoom the first week and then we're half YouTube video, half lecture. So that's why I want to make sure if you have any questions right now, you can ask them. All right, as you're continuing to think about questions, I'm going to pull up the syllabus and share my screen so we can go through the syllabus. Let's see. All right. All right. Has anyone had a chance to at least open the video lecture that I posted? Were you able to open it? Okay. So you didn't have to watch it by today. That other video you're able to watch between now and when I see you next week. But at least you have access to it. Okay. Let's share the, oh, before I do that, let's see. I'd like to get a sense of who was in this class. So I know usually I have some physical education majors, but I know other times I've got some people who are like pre-professional, maybe who were doing the pre-PT or OT. Would you mind telling me or typing in what majors we have?
Can we just say it?
Sure.
Oh, sure. I'm a phys ed, physical education major.
I see some phys ed. Do we have anybody else from other?
I'm health sciences to OT.
Okay.
Me too.
That's usually the case, but I like to ask just to make sure I'm not missing any population here. We got a lot of phys ed people. When I taught this last time, it was almost like 60-40, 60% phys ed, 40% health science. Okay. You are very responsive on the Zoom. So far, I'm impressed. I suppose it's because we've had practice. Oh, Brett. Oh, Brett. Right. I just recognized that name. Okay, cool. All right, let me share the screen and let's go through the syllabus. If at any point you have questions while we're on this Zoom call, feel free to ask or type it in. We do have, this goes until 3:50. So we got another hour here. I have a lot to get to. I better get started. Stop talking. All right. All right, so everyone here has been able, let me get my, let's see here, so I can see, where's the gallery view? Hold on. Participants. I thought I'd be able to see everyone on the screen here. Maybe not. More. This Zoom thing is for the birds, isn't it? It's a nice way of saying it. Can I see the chat? Let's see. All right. I'm not sure I can see the chat right now while I'm sharing the screen. So if you have a question, can I pull it up? Oh, I found the chat. Okay. You have to forgive us old folks with this technology. All right, so everyone's been to the Moodle course? Yes? I wanted to make sure that I made it available. Can I have someone confirm that you're able to get on the Moodle and see everything? It's available?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. I appreciate that. Thank you. All right, so you saw the link for today's Zoom meeting. You saw a link for the first video. And then somewhere, oh yeah, here's the course syllabus. You can see the course syllabus here. Let's pull it up. All right. How do I get that zoomed over here? Oh my God. It's driving me crazy. Okay. So I don't actually have office hours on Russell Sage's campus, but I'm happy to talk with you before or after class when we meet either Monday or Thursday. And I'm also happy to schedule a Zoom meeting. So if you have a lot of questions, just send me an email and you can ask, hey, can we schedule a Zoom time? I have a lot of questions. See my email address there. You can also email me through Moodle. All right. I talked about the setup of the course, so hopefully everyone's cool with that. There is a textbook, but wouldn't you know, I typed it into Google and I put free, and the darn thing's available for free. Did you all see that? So I am saving you money. Have any of you tried to access this textbook?
Yes.
You were able to get to it successfully?
Yeah.
Yay. I mean, feel free with the money that you saved from not having to buy a textbook, feel free to buy me a gift. You know, once you get to know me a little bit, find the appropriate gift. So what you're going to find is the material that I provide, the exams are going to come right from the PowerPoints and the notes. So my suggestion would be to focus on the PowerPoints and the notes, and then use the textbook as a reference when needed. The textbook's good, and most of my notes come from the textbook, but you don't necessarily have to read everything through before we have a lecture. I would never throw a question on an exam that we didn't cover in lecture. So the book will have extra stuff, which is great, but anything that's extra, you don't have to know. You only have to know what we talk about in the lecture. There are some other textbooks that I found all for free. This is actually a pretty good biomechanics book. I did pull out an anatomy and physiology because a lot of times I spend time reviewing anatomy and physiology. Some people are right there with me. Other people need a little review, and that's fine. But if you need to review and you don't already have an A&P textbook, here is a free one. All right. You can read through the attendance and missed work policy on your own. Attendance in lecture is not mandatory, but I think you should come. What we talk about in lecture will be what's on the exams. I don't like to waste people's time. So when you come to lecture, it will be worth it because what we talk about is what will be on your exams. Lab, however, you got to be there. So make sure you are in lab and you are on time. Maybe you've heard the word on the street about Dr. Jenkins. She's that mean one. I don't know about that. But I expect you to be on time for lab. If something comes up and you're going to be a little bit late or you have a conflict, I know some of you are athletes, so I certainly understand you may have a game or something. So if there's a conflict, communicate with me. So as long as you contact me in advance or you contact me as soon as something happens, I'll do my best to work with you. You may be able to come to the other lab section, or if we need to make another arrangement, we'll do it. But I can only do that for people that communicate with me or for an excusable absence. Oversleeping is not an excusable absence. Okay. If there are unexcused absences, for every unexcused absence, 5 percentage points comes off your lab grade. For the most part, people in this class tend to be responsible and there. All right, cool. If you have any questions, let me know. I did put a little blurb on the syllabus in the event that we have to go remote. Hopefully we won't. Okay, here's the grading. Everyone loves that. what we do in lecture, which is going to include 4 lecture exams and 1 assignment, that's going to make up 50% of your lab grade. What we do in lab makes up 25% of your lab grade. And then our final exam makes up the remaining 25%. Cool, cool. In lecture, those 4 exams will probably be about 50 to 60 questions each, multiple choice and some short answer, but no essay. The assignment I'll introduce next week. The lecture exams I'm going to give on a Thursday when we meet in person. So they're not going to be through Moodle. For lab, I mean, hey, it's called kinesiology. We're studying human movement. So I am going to ask you to come prepared for lab in shorts and a t-shirt, or like, what do you call those tight pants? The tights, I guess, right? Tights, sweatpants. Okay. And that's going to start next week, right? So make sure you have like sweatpants or shorts, and a short sleeve shirt, because we'll be doing some movement. If you're not properly attired, I'll kick you out because you can't do the lab. All right, questions on that? And of course, you're going to wear a mask next week. Yes, yes, yes. Okay. You can read through the rest. All right. I don't take late work. That's on there somewhere, right? So I don't take late work. So when our assignments are due, make sure you hand them in on time. Not like 10 minutes after class starts, when the class starts. All right, so have you checked out the schedule? I am organized. We have the schedule for the whole semester. It's exciting. So you can see what we're going to be doing each week. For example, next week, you'll see the topic of what the video is you need to watch on your own. I've planned it so that hopefully you can watch that video on your own sometime between Monday and Wednesday. Therefore, when we meet in person for lecture on Thursday, it is my expectation that you have watched the video. And then what we're doing in lab. There's no lab today. Because we didn't have classes on Monday, there was no way for me to have a lab today. So if you have lab today, we're not really meeting. Go enjoy yourselves and enjoy it while you can. You can see when our exams are. Do you notice, folks, our first lecture exam is 2 weeks from today. That's going to come up quickly. I'll give you more information on that exams next Thursday. The reason why it kind of comes up quickly is because I want to fit in 4 exams. And I think most people actually like that, because that way there's less material on each exam. Versus, have you ever had a class where maybe you only have 2 exams all semester? And then it makes it so much more material per exam, right? So this way, I think actually it breaks it up more, and most students like that. We do have a spring break. Later on, we have some presentations in lab. I'll discuss that in lab. Those are the basics, folks. All right, let me stop share. That's kind of the basic outline. Questions, comments, thoughts?
Maybe I missed it, but do we need like a lab book or anything?
I'm going to answer that question right now. Good question. So everyone, for your viewing pleasure, I have created a binder for lab for everyone. So you don't have to buy a lab manual, because there really isn't one for this particular type of kinesiology, or not one that I like. So when you come to lab next week, I will give you each a binder. Some are blue, some are orange, some are red. It's whatever Staples had. But in that binder will be all of the labs. So you'll be able to use this to work through the labs, right? And then your final lab project is in here. I have for you a big pile of muscle stuff because I found that that tends to be something that people need a reminder with. So you've got all this wonderful information on muscles, and in lab, we're going to be doing some palpations of bony structures. So I've included some material to help you with our palpations. So everything you need will be in the lab binder that I will hand out to you in person and is yours to keep. And I'll give it out to you next week in lab. Other questions, thoughts, comments? Nothing. No one has a joke to share to get things started? I gotta give the joke? All right, fine. Let me make it, I'm so bad at making jokes. I have to say it in my head first because sometimes I say it wrong and then it messes it up. Hold on. Oh yeah. Wait a minute. I got it. What kind of bee produces milk? Like a little bee. What kind of bee produces milk? A booby. Come on. About as G-rated as I can get. Okay, I'm going to share the screen again. So we went through the syllabus, you know about your lab manual, your lab binder, I should say. So I posted the material for lecture 1. So if I go back to the syllabus, you can see that, let's see. Lecture 1 here was just called Introduction. You'll see on Moodle, there is a chapter outline. So you have access to a PowerPoint and also a chapter outline. The chapter outline basically is your study guide for that chapter. So as you go through the PowerPoint and or watch the video or listen to me lecture, I'll be following this outline. This first introduction chapter, that's the video that I posted. So if you haven't already, between now and when I see you next, watch this video and you can fill in the notes on the introduction outline. So that's going to be up to you to watch. It's a shorter introduction. That's why I recorded that as our video. Today, we're going to go ahead with our second topic, which is terminology and human motion. Again, there's a chapter outline, and this is what we'll be following. And then also a PowerPoint. So hopefully you have the hopefully you have the lecture outline available to you because you can fill in the notes. Here's what we're going to do. The first part of this chapter is a review because I know, I'm looking at you, I know all of you have had anatomy and physiology. So this is a review. So the first part, all the way up until here. So this whole part that I've highlighted, I'm going to record a video reviewing that beginning part. So you'll actually have 2 videos to watch before next Thursday. Okay, so I'm purposely doing a video for the easier stuff as a review. And that's what I'm hoping to do for the semester. Leave some of the easier anatomy review stuff for the video that you watch on your own. And then when we meet in lecture, have that be the harder stuff. Okay. Is everyone clear on this? I'm going to be recording a video. It'll be up shortly for you to watch. That will be the first part of our chapter 2. Today, we're going to jump ahead, and I want to start with Roman numeral 5, mechanics. Sound like a plan, Stan? Can I get a something? Yes, hi, yes, no, maybe?
Yes.
It's like pulling teeth. All right. One other thing that I want to say before we get started, in terms of this course, as I said, there's a component of it that's going to be a review, hopefully, of anatomy and physiology. It is my expectation that you are comfortable with that, but I'm still going to do a review. For some of you, the beginning parts of those chapters are going to be a review and you'll probably think, yeah, I got it. But I'm guessing, and my experience tells me, because I've taught this course many years, that for some of you, you're going to need to review some of that anatomy and physiology. We may be going a little bit more in depth. And it's probably just a little, you haven't had it for a bit. So wherever you are, whether you remember the anatomy well, or whether you need to do some review, make sure you do that review. Hopefully when it comes to exam times, the anatomy stuff can be stuff that you really excel at, right? It's very cut and dry. What's the structure of this? What two bones form this? Because above that is actually where we get to some of the kinesiology stuff, the study of the motion and the force and the newtons and this and that. So that's going to be more challenging. So probably for a lot of you, for most of you, you're going to have to do some work for this course. I'm not sure what you've heard about it in the past, but my goal here is to give a course that's a real legitimate course to prepare you for whatever you're going on to next or for your career. But that being said, I like to say, and I try to be challenging but fair. Okay, so I'm not going to throw any questions on an exam that we didn't talk about. I'm going to give you materials. I'm here to answer questions. So hopefully I'm scaring you a little bit because I want you to start the semester off on a good foot. Our first exam comes up quickly, so take this material, really get started, don't wait. And I'm here to answer questions as you have them. That is my best cheerleading speech, but I'm not a cheerleader. Questions, thoughts, comments? Let me pull up the chat thing so I can, probably chatting to each other. Who's this woman? All right, gotta watch my time, make sure we have till 3:50, right? All right, we are going to jump in right here, ways to study mechanics. Very exciting. Okay. I have some hand notes here. I'm not doing a crossword puzzle or whatever. Okay. Let me make sure I know where to start here. Veins and body, forms of motion, ways to study mechanics. All right. So we're going to start with defining kinematics. So we have kinematics versus kinetics. On the PowerPoint, unlike lower level classes where you might have a PowerPoint that goes slide by slide over everything, this is not going to be that way. Sometimes I'll give you a slide with exact definitions, but other times I'll just be giving you information for you to fill in on your own. But no matter, either way, we're going to be following this chapter outline. All right, cool. So kinematics versus kinetics. Maybe you've heard that, maybe you haven't. Let's give some simple definitions. And if you have any questions, interrupt me, chat, write a question. Kinematics is a study of the description of motion. I mean, check it out. Kinesiology is the study of human movement, the study of human movement. So as we study human movement, we can do it in a way that involves kinematics, describing the motion. I've given you some examples. We can describe a motion by describing the distance someone runs, the distance between the feet of someone as they shoot a free throw, the distance between anything. We can describe kinematics and describe motion through speed or velocity, acceleration, all these things. Then, if I skip ahead for a moment, if kinematics is the study of the description of motion, kinetics is when we involve the study of force. The key word for kinetics is that we're studying a force. So all of these examples of a kinetic analysis involve force. The inertia of something, how much force it has as it goes through space. The mass of something, its weight involves weight, the force of that weight. We can simply measure force produced through how much weight someone can lift. Our assessment of center of gravity involves the forces of an object over a base of support. Torque is the involvement of force over an axis. So if we really want to start and simplify it, we can study mechanics and movement through kinematics. Kinematics is just a description of motion. It's kind of broad, but that's okay. Kinematics is a description of motion. Kinetics is more of an analysis of motion involving force. You're going to put together kinetics and force like peanut butter and jelly. Kanye West and crazy. All right. If you have questions, please feel free to ask. So let's go back to kinematics. Kinematics is the description of motion. And we can use a whole bunch of ways to describe motion. We can use units like, hold on, speed or velocity, acceleration, projectile. So our study of kinematics, the description of motion, it can be either linear or angular. Now, if I go back in the notes, we haven't talked about this yet because this is something I'm going to be describing in the video, but I want to make sure I introduce it. I'm going to be throwing some terms at you. So already I've thrown at you kinematics, right? Kinematics is a study of the description of motion. Kinematics, description of motion. Kinetics, the study of forces and motion. But if I go back in the video that you're going to watch, I'm going to talk about other ways, other definitions. We can describe a motion either being linear or angular. And that kind of sounds like what you think it sounds like. If I go back in the PowerPoint, I actually give you the definitions. Linear motion is when motion occurs in one direction at one speed. I think that makes sense. Doesn't linear kind of give you an idea of a straight line? Linear. So linear motion is any type of motion, whether it's the body in motion or whether it's a projectile, whether it's a baseball pitch and you're looking at the ball. So whether we're talking about motion of a person or motion of an object, it can be linear. Movement is occurring in one direction at one speed. Or it can be angular. An angular motion is when motion occurs in more than one direction, in more than one speed. Usually, angular motion is around an axis. I'm going to talk more about this in the video. But linear motion in one direction at one speed, linear motion in one direction at one speed, angular movement around an axis or movement that is in more than one direction or more than one speed. So if we go back to kinematics and kinetics, guess what? Kinematics can be either linear or angular. I think a lot of this is challenging just because of the terminology. Hopefully, as a student by now, you know how you best retain information. So you might want to start just with the definitions, right? Linear, study of motion or motion that's occurring in one speed in one direction. Linear. Angular, motion that's around an axis. Kinematics, we're describing motion. Kinetics, we're analyzing things with force. Once you can get those basic definitions, then you can start to combine them. Because guess what? If we're analyzing motion through kinematics, if we're describing motion, we can do it, we can describe motion that is linear, and we can describe motion that is angular. In general, linear kinematics. So we're describing motion that's occurring in one direction at one speed. Wouldn't linear kinematics be easier? If we're trying to describe a motion in one direction and one speed, that's typically an easier analysis versus angular kinematics. Whereas I'm trying to describe motion that's angular. So usually linear kinematics is easier. It has simpler units. Angular kinematics is more difficult because you have more difficult units to work with. Here are some examples of units that we might use. So if we're looking at linear kinematics, we might use simpler units. Now, some people might say miles per hour, but of course we like the metric system, don't we? As scientists, come on. Excuse me. So we could say meters per second or miles per hour. We could measure, acceleration, or we could measure the motion of a projectile. I mean, the easiest example of linear kinematics would be meters per second or acceleration, because we're measuring velocity or speed, and we're measuring acceleration. Whereas angular kinematics, remember, kinematics, we're describing motion, but we're not utilizing force. That's kinetics. Kinematics, we're describing motion without force. But we can still look at the degrees of a joint. So we could look at joint range of motion. revolutions of a football as it's being thrown. I'm going to even throw at you more terms. I know we're starting right here. So when we collect data, it can be either qualitative or quantitative. You know what these mean, right? These are earlier in your notes. Which one of these measurements involves a number?
Quantitative.
Yeah, pretty easy, right? So when we're talking about kinematics, right? So we're talking about kinematics, describing motion. You can describe motion in a qualitative way, but also a quantitative way. All of these examples of units are quantitative, right? I can measure the velocity of a runner in a straight line. That velocity would give me a quantitative value. But I can also measure, I can also assess kinematics qualitatively, right? We can look at a description of a baseball pitcher and we can just describe it. That baseball pitcher had a very fluid motion, or that baseball pitcher didn't bend their trunk as much forward. These are all qualitative, right? So I'm just reminding you that we can do kinematics in a quantitative or a qualitative way. So look at the terms first, right? Qualitative versus quantitative, linear versus angular, kinematics versus kinetics. Okay. Again, if you have any questions, feel free to ask or type them in. Okay. I was just looking. So when I share my screen, I can see the chat, but you can't. So if you have a question, and you can still type it in, and not everyone will see it if you were nervous. Just saying. All right, so in the PowerPoints, I'm going to give you some examples. If my PowerPoint wants to work. Hey. When you see these examples, I don't want you to flip out inside, because I'm not going to ask you these specific numbers, right? I'm not going to ask you the specific numbers. I give you some examples because I want to give you some applications, right? So these are some examples of a kinematic analysis. Kinematics tells us that we're describing the motion, but I can still assign a number. So I can look at what is the normal amount of external rotation in a human being. A normal person, a non-baseball pitcher, has an entire range of motion of 130 degrees. But a baseball player has more shoulder external rotation. Why would a baseball pitcher develop a greater range of motion with shoulder external rotation? Why do baseball pitchers have more external rotation range of motion than non-baseball pitchers?
I would say because they like work on it. Like that's what they're meant to be doing. So they constantly are training to get themselves that far.
Yeah, I mean, every time they throw a pitch, they're violently bringing their elbow back, and it is stretching this ulnar collateral ligament. So over time, throwing every pitch over time, that ligament and the joint capsule loosens. And as a result, they have more range of motion. Okay. In some ways, this could be considered a linear analysis, because if I just take a snapshot in time, or it could be an angular analysis if I was looking at the entire range of motion as it moves. Again, I'm not going to ask you these specific numbers. I'm just trying to give you some examples of a kinematic analysis. We could also look at a kinematic analysis of acceleration, right? Acceleration was one of the examples of how we could study kinematics. So we could actually look at how much acceleration is occurring at the shoulder. These are real numbers. I'm not going to ask you them, but when that baseball pitcher is about to release the ball at the shoulder, there can be as much as 6,940 degrees per second of acceleration. Isn't that a lot? Yes. Some might consider this a linear kinematic discussion because the shoulder is moving in one direction at one speed, but other people may consider it angular because if you look at the shoulder versus the elbow versus the trunk, the joints are not all working together at one speed. Right now, I'm just trying to give you some examples. So what I would like you to know, you should be able to define kinematics and kinetics. You should be able to give some examples of each of these. So I've given you, I would say know 2 examples of each. So you should be able to give 2 things that you could measure for linear kinematics. I could measure speed or acceleration, or I could measure a projectile motion. Acceleration or speeds, easy. You should be able to give 2 examples of how you could measure angular kinematics. Revolutions of something rotating, degrees of motion. Or actually a good one, let me add one here. This is the example I gave, angular velocity. That's a good angular kinematic. So be able to give 2 examples of each, 2 examples of something you could measure for linear kinematics and angular kinematics. So I'm trying to be real clear here so you know what I would like you to know and then what is extra information. Are you with me? As Omar from The Wire used to say, you feel me? You picking up what I'm putting down? How about some more examples? We could also measure as a kinematic analysis the velocity of the projectile. So remember I said kinematics, we can measure the actual body, the person, or we could measure a projectile. We're still describing the motion. Isn't velocity or speed a linear kinematic? Yes, speed, velocity, kinematic. Here are some baseball pitchers. Cool. These are kind of older guys because I'm old, but you know. Here's an example of an angular kinematic. So instead of measuring just the speed, linear is the speed in one direction at one time. Angular means that we're talking about things moving at different speeds and different times or around an axis. The angular displacement of a curveball. You know, when a baseball is released, it's spinning. And then as it's spinning, it starts here. And what does a curveball do? The ball starts here and then it drops. So we can measure that angular displacement. Not Tim Lincecum, Clayton Kershaw, look at this. The ball is spinning at 330 revolutions per minute. That would be angular, wouldn't it? It's angular. Or by the time the pitch leaves his hand until it gets to the catcher, it's done over 3 complete revolutions in angular displacement. It's crazy. You don't need to know these exact numbers. I'm just giving you some examples. Just be able to give some examples. Angular velocity or displacement, right? So you could use angular velocity as an example or angular displacement. But these are all considered kinematics because we're not describing particular force. Cool. All right, now I'm going to ask you. I'm tired of talking. So I've given you some examples in the sports world. Tell me, how else could you utilize kinematics in your personal life, in your future career? How could you utilize kinematics, the description of motion?
I could be wrong, but I think like rehab, like for PTOT, like you want to look at the range of motion of your clients to make sure it's back to where it should be.
Exactly. Can you give me a specific example of what injury or condition someone might have and like what joint or what motion you're looking at?
Yeah, I guess if you have like a sprain or like a tear, or you broke something, like say your leg, you broke your leg, or you want to like make sure that that joint in your leg can move the same way or like is back to where it should be before you got injured.
Okay. I was looking for something more specific, but I appreciate you spoke up here. Yeah, so think about someone who has an ACL reconstructive surgery in their knee, right? Right after surgery, they're going to have their range of motion limited, but you're going to want to be able to describe that ability to flex their knee over time. There's actually certain benchmarks, right? Like within 4 weeks after surgery, you want to be able to have the knee flexion range of motion to 90 degrees. Well, these are a description of motion, right? So rehab is an example. What else? How can you utilize kinematics, describing motion in your own life or in your field? Someone speak up, or it's going to be a long wait till 3:50.
Just like determining the speed of an object.
How
That would be
might that
kinematics,
be
right?
helpful or useful? I mean, it's fun, it's cool, but how might it actually, how might that information be valuable to someone?
Not sure.
I feel like when you're driving a car, you should know how fast the other cars are driving towards you.
Yeah, that's an example. I like that. Okay. What about like an athlete? How might they benefit from knowing about the velocity of something?
Well, like tennis players, if you're like playing a tennis match, you need to know how fast the tennis ball is coming at you so you can react and hit it better.
That's true, but you could also use it for your own performance. So let's say you're trying different grips on the racket, or you're working on your form. You might actually want to measure the speed of the ball of that serve, and then you could compare. So let's say that your normal motion, your normal form, it only goes 70 miles per hour for the serve. But if you adjust the range of motion here and you adjust the grip here, now when you do it, the tennis serve is 90 miles per hour, right? We can analyze motion to help reduce injury risk. So we can measure forces on certain joints that might be bad and try and help better like lifting form for lifting weights. You might be able to utilize this, like people utilize this kind of analysis when they're developing prosthetic devices, or if they're developing athletic equipment. You know, let's say that they're developing a new golf club and they want to check out certain materials. Well, they can measure how far someone can drive the ball to see how effective the new material for the golf club is. It'll be easier once we're in person. Then I can look at you and guilt you into talking. Not that I would do that, but. Okay, so we've been talking about kinematic analysis, which is just describing motion. And we can describe motion that's linear or angular. And we can use certain things that we're measuring: speed, velocity, acceleration, displacement. But then we have kinetics, right? And kinetics is all about a study that involves force. So we want to have kinetics and force together. And this is going to give us a whole new, this is going to give us a whole new set of things that we can analyze. By involving force in our analysis of motion, we can start to measure things like what I have listed on the screen here, whether it's things in the person, on the person, or objects. Be able to give some examples of things that we can measure that would be kinetic. Actually, I'm gonna, if you were given like a multiple choice question, you should be able to identify that all these things on the screen here involve kinetics. Not kinematics, that was more speed, velocity, projectiles, displacement. That was kinematics. Now we're doing kinetics. All of these things involve force in some way. And it's not like one is better than the other. I mean, kinetics is cool because we get all this force information, but that doesn't mean that the kinematics is not valuable. It's just different. In our lab number 2, right? So our second lab, we're going to be doing a kinematic and kinetic analysis right in the laboratory. So certainly by then, you're going to have a better understanding of these terms. So in lab, we can really dive in. Okay. Let's talk about some of these. We're going to spend quite a bit of time talking about force and then torque. Later this semester, we're going to be actually calculating center of gravity, which is really cool. But right now, force. I mean, I think you can define force, right? The force is a pull or a pushing on something. What I want to point out here is we're going to use newtons as our unit. So when we measure force, we're not going to use pounds of force because that's the stupid American way to do it. We're going to measure force in newtons. In lab in a couple of weeks, I'm going to bring in a little handheld force measurer, and you'll be able to push against it and get a reading of exactly how many newtons of force. That's cool. So know that newtons is our unit for force measurement of kinetics. And then we're going to start a discussion of torque. There's a couple ways you can define torque. Here you can see it's defined as a rotary force. So it's not just straight on force. It's force around an axis, or rotary force. So I've given you a couple of definitions. Some people like to say it's a rotary force. Personally, it just sinks in my head better when I say it's a force around an axis. So it's not just a force like I'm pushing someone. You can think of a tug of war or like lifting a weight as an easier way to think of force maybe. Torque is that force around an axis. So a baseball pitch is a great way to think about the force around an axis. I'm developing force in my shoulder and elbow, but I'm moving that force around an axis. You should also know that we're going to measure torque, and the unit is Newton meters. You can do foot-pounds of torque, but we don't like the American way. Not for this. So Newton meters is our unit for measuring torque. I've given you one of the equations, but you don't need to know the equation. That's good news, isn't it? You don't need to know the equation. It's on here just because it looks cool and scientific. Come on. So again, here's the equation, but you don't need to know the equation. I've given you an example, but again, I'm not going to ask you any specific numbers. I mentioned a baseball pitch. So this is one of the biggest torques that we see in the human body. During a baseball pitch, when that pitcher cocks back and then springs the elbow forward, that's force around an axis. And we can measure that. 64 Newton meters of force just at the elbow. Later in the semester, we have a whole chapter on the elbow, and we'll talk about this more. They've done like cadaver studies where they do studies of torque on the cadaver elbows. I forget the exact number. Do I have it on the screen? No. But like the cadavers can only handle like 50 or 60 Newton meters of torque before it breaks, before the ligament tears. So this is a huge amount of force, huge amount of torque. But they get used to it over time. But isn't an elbow injury pretty common in pitchers? Because of all the torque, rotary force. All right. Let me just go ahead for 1 second. Okay. So again, I have some examples here of how we can do a kinetic analysis. I'm not going to ask you these specific numbers. Just be able to give me examples of things we can measure that would be kinetic, right? So all of these things are kinetic. What are some examples of a kinetic analysis? We can look at mass and the force produced from that mass. So when we enter the mass into our analysis of force, right? Force equals mass times accelerate, blah, 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 blah. I'm not going to ask you these specific things. This is kind of cool. How much force is required to stop a running back in football? Check this out. A 98 kilogram running back. How many pounds is that? 98 kilos. We take 98 times 2.2. Let me get the 98 times 2.2. That's a 215-pound dude. So if you have a 215-pound dude running at a speed of 22 miles per hour, how much force is required to stop that 215-pound dude who's accelerating to 22 miles an hour? He would need 1,921 newtons of force to stop him. That in newtons is the same as 432 pounds of force. I'm not going to ask you to do these calculations. Is everyone clear? I'm not going to ask you to do the calculations. But because this is an assessment of force, it will be considered kinetic. Does that make sense? That's a lot of pounds of force. Do you want to be in his way? Who can tell me who that former Minnesota Vikings running back is?
It's Adrian Peterson.
There you go. Adrian Peterson. Wasn't he playing? Is he still with the team?
Played on the Seahawks for like one game and then they cut him.
Yeah, yeah. Okay. You can see next on your notes here, if you're following along in your notes, we can talk about types of loads. So within a kinetic analysis, and I know we're almost done here, but I see the time, but I just want to introduce this quickly. Let me close my door real quick. Hold on. So when we talk about kinetics or forces, we can describe a force as applying different types of loads. There's a compression load, and you should know these. A compression load is a pushing or pulling force. I'm sorry, a compression is a pushing. I gotta wake up for this semester. A compression is a pushing force. You know this. Tension is a pulling force, right? And then a shear would be like a side to side or a side to side force. Side to side. So compression is pushing. Tension is pulling. Shear is side by side. And then you can have a combined load. We're going to come back to center of gravity. So be able to describe what type of forces or loads would be happening here. So these last couple examples and we'll be done. What kind of load caused Tom Brady's ACL tear way back when? Compression, tension, shear.
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 That's more of a shearing force, right? There's a force coming from one direction while his leg is moving in the other direction. What type of force is occurring at her shoulders as she's swinging?
Tension.
Tension.
It's tension because her body weight is pulling the shoulder away. What type of force is occurring in this poor guy's cervical spine?
Compression.
Compression, right? All right, cool. Okay, everyone. So really great meeting you. I'm happy so many of you jumped on to the Zoom call. I'm going to make a video of the rest of this material. Please watch it before next Thursday when we meet. And also watch that introduction, which is a shorter video. And I will see you in lab either on Monday or Thursday in the gym. If you have any questions, you can stay on the call and I can answer them. Otherwise, thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you.
You.
Bye.
Is it okay for Thursday? I can join the lab.
Yes, I reached out to Dr. Stapleton and he said it was okay. He asked me to send an email to you and him, and then he has to do some paperwork.
Okay.
But I'm gonna send that email to you and him today.
Okay, awesome. Thank you.
But just, come in on Thursday.
Awesome. Appreciate it. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Casey.
Have a good one. Bye.